start previewing the actual game itself. And I want to start with the quarterbacks. So you've got Will Howard and Riley Leonard. These are both transfer quarterbacks. They both were essentially available at the same time last year. And Notre Dame picked Riley Leonard. That was like telegraphed, right? I think it was a do not contact tag in the portal. They knew that they were going to get Riley Leonard. Will Howard took a little bit longer to land at Ohio State, but they have both been really, really good in their new systems. I think you could argue for both. It took a minute. Certainly, I think for Will in the spring, there's still a lot of, Devin Brown was still getting reps in spring ball. And at the spring game, I think there were still people like, all right, where's that Will Howard that, you're so excited to get? But he has been really terrific as of late. Got great chemistry with those receivers that we'll get into a little bit later for Ohio State. And, just overwhelming amount of numbers, right? Almost, 3,800 pass yards, completing 72.6% of his passes, 40 total touchdowns. He does have 10 interceptions, and some of them have come at inopportune times, as we've seen throughout some of Ohio State's big games. And then Riley Leonard, he has been terrific mostly as a runner, right? 866 rushing yards. He's accounted for 35 total touchdowns. We've wondered all season, what if they need to win a game on his arm? It hasn't happened. They haven't fallen behind enough where that's become an issue. And it just like he has endeared himself, I think, to the entire nation, the way that he has handled this, the way that he is fearless. He's just kind of like always throwing his body for a couple of extra yards. But both of these quarterbacks have fit the place really well, which I think is really cool. And Ryan Day was talking about Will Howard after the Cotton Bowl because he was sitting at a press conference and he had Jack Sawyer next to him and Will Howard. And everyone was talking about Jack Sawyer and this kid who grew up right outside of Columbus, who dreamt of, playing in a national championship game for the Buckeyes. First player to commit to Ryan Day when he was elevated as the head coach. First player last year to commit to coming back and putting us all together. So Ryan's talking about how much Jack Sawyer's meant to him and how he's like a part of his family. And, no one cares about like the Buckeyes more. Like this kid like bleeds it. And then he talks about Will Howard and how it's kind of crazy to think it's only been a year that he's been there because of how he's fit into the place and how much it all means to him. And you see that, right? Like he put out the little cigarette, right? When they beat Indiana, he got real in on the conversation around Ohio State, Michigan week. Like he has embraced all of the parts about being at Ohio State in like a very short compressed time frame. As he's grown more and more comfortable in the offense. So it's a really interesting quarterback matchup because I think the question of like, which one's a better quarterback is different than which quarterback do you trust, like in crunch time. I think it's different because I think Will Howard's definitely the better quarterback. But Riley Leonard's just got like something in him where like, if it's a fourth down to decide the game, I think I trust Riley Leonard more.
Riley Leonard is a ball player, right? Like he's a guy that you want to have in your corner because like to your point, when it's crunch time, he's gonna do whatever it takes to try to make a play. I think Will Howard is that guy as well for Ohio State. It's just a different skill set where it's like, what is that thing that he has to do? With Riley Leonard, it's like if he's got to pull the ball down and try to break 4 tackles, we've seen him do that before. I do think it's really interesting for both of these guys coming in. I think the transfer quarterback, and especially when you're transferring into a team that believes they're a contender, is a weird spot. And I think being a quarterback is more than just having the arm, the command of the offense, and the knowledge of the playbook. I think you got to be a guy. Like, I think you got to be the dude in the locker room that people say that they want to play for. And when I was at Ohio State, we had JT Barrett, who was very much that guy, and certainly limited with the arm, was a great runner, but like just made plays for us, and we felt like we could follow behind him. And when Cardale stepped in, he had that type of moxie as well. But those guys had been in the program. We had gotten to know them. These dudes stepping in is crazy. And like from the Ohio State standpoint, Will Howard, it's almost like, we in our group chat, we had folks who made the comment like, well, who does this guy think he is? He hasn't been around all that long. And my response was always, he thinks he's a quarterback at Ohio State, and this is what he has to do for the team to be successful. And I think he believes that, and I think the guys buy into it. So watching them both as leaders, I think has been the fun part about this. Agreed. Now, to the question of the game, it is really interesting. I do think Notre Dame against Penn State was in that spot where they had to throw it to try to get back into it a little bit. but it was Steve Angeli that went in and did a great job and only had one incompletion on that drive where it set them up for the field goal, right? So like,
yeah, that was a really pivotal moment, right? In the season for Notre Dame.
But to your point, it wasn't Riley Leonard, right? Like we didn't watch him do that. It's such an interesting thing when it comes to these quarterbacks. So to answer the question, it's really hard for me not to believe in Will Howard in the way that he's played so far. But if Notre Dame gets the game that they want, which is the game that they've pretty much played like every point during the regular season after NIU and in critical moments during this postseason, like you got to be scared of Riley Leonard because you know that he's just got that thing where he is going to have his team in the right spot.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point because it is going to come down to the way the game is played.